Hello everyone. Today we will discuss the topic of invites and I will answer the most frequently asked questions. You can find the invite section in the left menu. We won't go over the work with phone numbers and invites by phone numbers because there's just one main point to keep in mind. Stick to the limits. The limits are the same as for the check of members, which means no more than 20 per task per day and no more than 30 total in a day. No more than 20 per task and no more than 30 in a day. For example, one task can be done using 15 requests from accounts, and then in the second task, after 5 to 6 hours, another 15. But there you should check the limits depending on the country. Some countries can have occasional glitches in this regard. For work with members, you need to conduct preliminary tests and draw your own conclusions regarding the limits. As for the main invite, we have a regular invite version 1 and another one version 2, as well as through admins version 1 and version 2. These two invites, version 1 and version 2, work by usernames. Here, through administrators, it's also by usernames. Let's start with the differences of the regular invite by usernames. Version 1 is the older version of the module. Version 2 is newer, with additional options. This includes a forced number of invited users and checking if a user is in the group before the invite. This module also automatically checks a user's presence in the group after the invite and updates the corresponding status in the database. Version 1 does not do this. However, version 1 is a bit older. We left you with both versions on purpose. You often ask why there are two versions of the invite by usernames, so that everyone can decide for themselves which version works best for them. In the second version, the approach to invites is different, and even comparing the logs of the software, it's slightly different. Therefore, if you don't know which of the two modules to choose, I recommend using both modules. Start with version 1 with 2 to 3 accounts, then try version 2 with 2 to 3 accounts. Check the logs to see how things are going and draw your own conclusions about what works best for you based on the results of the modules. Because some people work with version 1, as they say, the old way, while others use version 2, but some might not find version 2 suitable due to the specifics of how the module operates. Since the algorithm of the invite has been slightly changed in this module, there are no global changes, but there are some adjustments in the code. So, in this case, make your decision. It's also indicated in both versions for usernames the total number of users from one account and the number of users in one request. The number of users in one request refers to how many people will be added to the chat at once. If you manually try to add users to any chat, you enter one username, and that username doesn't get added to the chat right away. You can enter 2, 3, or 4, and then press the invite button all at once, which counts as one request. But in this request, there will be several users, and this point indicates how many users will be in one request. But keep in mind that this needs to be tested beforehand. By default, many operate with one user per request, meaning it's specified as one here. But if you understand how it works and are more in depth with the invite process, you can use a higher setting. However, don't set it too high, because Telegram has limits as well as issues with spam and other factors. So, test it out starting with small values. Then, draw your own conclusions based on that and work from there. Regarding the invite version 2 and these two options, the forced number of invitees. The software will count the total number not by requests, where a request is one attempt, but by the forced number of users. Use this option cautiously because, for example, if you have a user base where 80% of users have their privacy settings closed for invitations, then making 50 requests will only add about 10 to 15 people. If you enable the forced number, the software will try to achieve the specified value from your accounts. For instance, if you set it to 50, that is 50 actual users that manage to be invited. Here too, you need to test these points beforehand to avoid setting values too high and to understand the invitation process better. As for checking if a user is in the group before inviting, the software checks for the user in your chat before inviting them. If the user is not in the chat, they'll be invited. However, your chat must have the participants list open first, so all your accounts that will be inviting can see the list of participants. A common problem for many users is that they close the participants list in their chat, which means this option 1T worked correctly because your accounts 1T see the list of participants. Also, regarding inviting by username, this has been mentioned, but I'll remind you again. If you invite and the software indicates a successful status and the user is marked as invited in the database, but the user hasn't actually entered the chat, hasn't been invited, and you don't see it in recent actions, check your settings. You might have too low values for the delay between invites, or your overall limits might be too high, or the chat might not be warmed up properly. These factors must be taken into account in any case. If you start having problems with invitations, there's an issue somewhere in your sequence. Most often, it's a poorly warmed up chat, limits, spam, account issues, and so on. I recommend everyone test how the invite works in some chats. Read information on our forum, watch the videos. Study the information, conduct tests, and draw conclusions. Only after that, based on the information gathered and the tests conducted, should you make conclusions and move to practice. And in practice, continue testing even more to understand how everything works. Because it's important to remember that software is a tool, meaning there can't be any one-size-fits-all templates in work, where everyone does the same thing and everyone gets the same results. In any case, you need tests, a lot of individual factors related to countries. Some countries invite more, others less, and so on and so forth. There are quite a few nuances, and these nuances change periodically. From time to time, certain details shift, and just knowing them isn't enough. You need to really understand the topic. You need to comprehend how things work, and only then will you be able to effectively invite people into chats. For example, regarding invites to administrators, I also want to mention that version 1 is older, meaning you need to use special modules to add accounts to the chat as administrators in advance, so they can invite users. Then you go to the invite module through administrators version 1 and carry out the task from those accounts, but it's no more than 20 to 30 accounts at a time. After you've invited users from them, you need to go back to the special modules to remove administrators and delete those accounts from the admin list. So here, there's a main account selected, which is the primary one. This account will later assign your other accounts and also remove them. As for version 2, the process is automated through bots, meaning you assign the main administrator account and choose the accounts that will be inviting. There's already a separate video about this module on this channel. Be sure to watch it if you haven't already. The only main difference between these two modules is that in version 1, you assign the administrators yourself and work with those administrators. In version 2, you only need to assign the main admin and specify the bots. The bots will assign and remove your accounts from the admin list. So version 2 is more automated, but version 1 is still relevant because if you have a smaller task, for example, inviting people to a chat from 20 to 30 accounts. But getting caught up in creating bots and other things isn't always appealing, and it's pretty simple to just use a special module to assign administrator roles. Add them as admins in your chat and invite them through version 1. And that's it. Then you can remove those accounts that were invited. So, the only thing, as I've already mentioned, the main difference. The most important thing is that version 2 is more automated. You can upload 100 to 200 accounts. For example, in one task, the bots will automatically change. In the rest, the essence of the module's work is the same. For those who don't understand, the difference between a regular invite and an invite through admins is that the invite through admins follows the scheme where the user is added as an admin in your chat. After being added, they appear in the chat. Their admin rights are removed, but the user remains in the chat. So, there are two types of invitations. The first is direct through. Let's say, the official Telegram tool, which is the regular invite, and the invite version 2. The second is, let's say, unofficial, meaning there has a loophole in Telegram. When a user is invited as an admin, they are added as an admin, and then their admin rights are immediately removed through these two modules. But the user remains in the chat participants. So, it's a somewhat unconventional method. Also, when using version 1, don't forget about the number of slots for admins. There can be no more than 50. So, if you already have accounts, you need to add with a margin, considering that users will also be invited. Overall, when your accounts are added as admins, there should be no more than 30 to 35 admins in the chat for the software to work comfortably and successfully while adding users, including regarding invites by ID. Inviting by ID, like any other module such as sending by ID, works based on user IDs. However, in Telegram, there is no direct interaction using IDs like there is with usernames or phone numbers. This means you can go into Telegram, enter a person's phone number, and find them, or you can enter the username and find them. But you cannot enter their ID and find them because there is no direct interaction in Telegram itself. Therefore, to work with IDs, dormer chats are used. For example, if you've gathered an audience from a particular chat and you have that audience in your database, you need to invite this audience specifically by ID. Let's say you've processed this database using usernames and phone numbers, and you're left with users who have neither usernames nor phone numbers, only IDs. This is exactly why you need the Invite by ID module. When you specify the path to this database, the software's algorithm, which is similar to any other ID-based module, uses your accounts from which you are sending invitations. The software enters the chat where your audience was gathered and finds users there by ID. This capability exists in the Telegram API. Once it finds them, it adds them to your chat, meaning it invites them. If you don't have a donut chat or you only have a list of IDs, you can't do anything with that list because you specifically need a donut chat. The donut chat is where the audience was gathered from. If you collected participants from a chat, those who wrote in the chat, or from comments on a channel, then that chat is the donut chat. This way, your accounts can interact with your database and find them. For example, inviting them by ID or sending messages to them by ID. So, this is the only way to invite by ID, as well as send messages. There are no other options at the moment. Therefore, if you want to maximize your audience, say, invite them to your chat, you gather the audience using the software. Process that database, for example, first using usernames, then using phone numbers, because often a user may not have a username but has an open phone number, and you can work with that number. Then, with the remaining users, you work by ID. These are the main points I wanted to address regarding invites. As for the settings of the modules, there is nothing complicated. You specify the link, the users, and if it's by usernames. I've explained how to handle the number of users in one request. And don't forget that all information in any invite module is stored in the database in a convenient format, showing you who you've invited, their statuses, and so on. I hope I answered most of your questions. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.